Most K-pop fans would agree that there is a bit of a difference between boy group and girl group choreography. While there are many fans who enjoy both, others have a clear preference. Some consider boy group dancing to be inherently better and more impressive while voicing disappointment in girl groups. Others make fun of boy groups and claim that they overdo it. In this video, I want to look at the history behind this distinction and contextualize it from a feminist perspective. I also want to discuss the future of this debate. Let's start by defining the terms we are talking about. What is sexism? Sexism can be a belief that one sex is superior to or more valuable than another sex. It imposes limits on what men and boys can and should do and what women and girls can and should do. Sexist behaviors, conditions, and attitudes perpetuate stereotypes of social, gender, roles based on one's biological sex. According to such a view, women and men are opposite, with widely different and complementary roles. Women are the weaker sex and less capable than men. Now a short dive into the history of the two styles to understand where they're coming from. In the 80s, music videos and pop stars became extremely popular, especially due to MTV. Dancing was a big part of this pop culture, and the umbrella term for the choreography style of most female pop singers and their dancers later became commercial, originally sometimes commercial jazz. It can be a mixture of anything and isn't closely defined. Most of these dancers had a jazz background and adopted popular moves from street styles or elsewhere into the routines. In the 90s, there was already a typical look of commercial dance, and first-gen K-pop idols and backup dancers often danced similarly to it. Nowadays, the jazz foundation really isn't obligatory and hip-hop seems to be a common foundation, but some parts of the technique remained, especially a focus on posture and alignment. It usually creates a strong, confident, and feminine impression. A difference that emerged between Western pop stars and the J-pop and K-pop scene is that the focus on viral arm moves, looking pretty rather than fierce, and a softer execution became the standard in the East, though in each generation there were dancers who didn't adhere to this standard. Now, what about boy groups? Dancing in the first generation involved a lot of jumping and popular moves, taking influence from popular hip-hop music videos as well as 90s boy groups in the US at the time. In second gen, choreos became more complex, with a focus on variations and formations. Early second gen was defined by the influence of male R&B singers. Some main dancers who danced in this particular style were Big Bang's Taeyong and Beast's Gikwang. Popping and breaking became popular in the South Korean dance scene and influenced the choreos, though the internationally recognized b-boys seemed to stay away from the K-pop scene. Then there was the emergence of dance crews and thus a choreographed version of the street styles, often mixing many of them together. Shows in the US such as ABDC made crews like Jabberwockies popular, and in South Korea there were the first all-styles or open styles choreo crews as well. Being extremely synchronized was what the audience was especially amazed by.
The masks make them look like they're the same person, so when they dance, it's like they're all doing the same exact movements.
Even though this development was met with criticism from some street dancers, especially the lack of groove in most of these stage choreos, TV producers loved working with them. Second-gen group Beast is a great example for this switch. Sometime after their debut, Cube worked with the crew Pre-Pix and they collaborated with Mike Song of Kaba Modern, who were on ABDC. As some fans might know, ILL from Pre-Pix is often seen in behind-the-scenes videos with NCT as their teacher. Since then, K-pop boy groups have been influenced by the trends in the competitive choreo scene and the more mainstream parts of the dance scene in general, with the majority of the international choreographers being from there. For example, boy groups were influenced by the trend of dubstep dancing when that was viral. This might add a layer of confusion, but there is also a masculine version of commercial dance, which is usually what male backup dancers of pop stars have learned. It's different from the competition choreo. Some groups that I would describe as closer to this masculine, commercial style would be Infinite and Astro. Keep in mind that this is still a simplified rundown of the history of dance in popular culture. Now, let's talk about technique. An obvious difference in technique that I see is the way in which strength is created and used. Female idols use strength to hold their upper bodies in a secure and elegant way, with good posture, and the limbs move in a smaller manner, accentuating the lines and shapes of the body. Male idols often pay less attention to alignment and posture. Their goal is creating force and dynamics with the limbs, with punch-like movements and fast footwork. The difference this creates is that, on first glance, girl group dances would be called pretty and boy group dances powerful. Remember the part of the definition I quoted in the beginning that said perpetuating stereotypes is sexist? But why is there a divide in terms of training? Most companies debut boy groups and girl groups. Can't they all take the same lessons? Or at least learn the same styles from the same teachers? Is this development only natural? If you take a look behind the scenes, one thing becomes obvious. Many dance teachers and choreographers of boy groups are female dancers. Similarly, many girl groups have male choreographers. In the dance scene, choosing which style you dance has to do with your own preference or maybe your community. It's usually not assigned to you based on something like gender. While each part of the dance scene has their own issues when it comes to misogyny and homophobia, and there are some styles that aren't usually danced by men, there isn't a strict divide in the styles that K-pop takes from. Therefore, if there was no sexism involved, we would see similarly diverse dance styles and choreographies for idol groups. Instead, pretty much all girl groups still fall under the commercial umbrella with the same technical foundation. It also limits the expression and technique of boy groups, when many of them are seemingly afraid to move their hips. Let's look back at second and early third gen. There was a behavior that made the misogyny involved blatantly obvious. When male idols danced to girl group choreography, it turned into a parody, into mocking, into exaggeration. Even those male idols who can actually dance in heels and usually take it seriously, such as Jo Kwon, were seen as funny by the public. Female idols dancing to boy group choreography or having a dance break with the boys was seen as cool and powerful. This shows a preference for the male gender stereotype. They saw femininity as embarrassing or less than, and therefore it shouldn't be done by men in a genuine and serious way. Whenever men do something that is currently considered to be feminine, and we all know these stereotypes can change all the time, it's met with more mockery than the other way around because our society subconsciously, or consciously, views women as lesser and therefore doesn't want men to be like women, while women showing a masculine aesthetic is seen as cool because men are seen as such. Nowadays, there seems to be more genuine praise for male idols who dance girl group choreography genuinely, while those who exaggerate the original are made fun of. Still, some are dishonest about the lack of skill that these male idols have outside their comfort zone and portray their covers as some sort of revolutionary breaking of boundaries. What should change? Now you could say that there is nothing wrong with doing easy point dances, with doing a pretty version of commercial dance, and I completely agree. It actually makes sense for singers to have easy choreography. The problem isn't individual groups doing this, but pretty much all groups being trained accordingly. The problem is that the industry creates a fabricated image in which the average viewers are made to believe that men and women just naturally dance differently, because that's all they get to see. Because of this, some fans claim that women just aren't able to dance as strongly as men. You really just need to take a glance at the actual dance scene and you will see that the skills of professional female dancers is way above that of the average male idol dancer. The show Street Woman Fighter helped people understand this. Still, some fans claim that Jihyo and Momo from Twice or soloist Alexa overdance because they dance stronger than the typical female idol. They dance like normal dancers in this style would outside of K-pop. You rarely saw the same comment about male main dancers, even though they put in way more energy than those female idols and the rest of their own group. At the same time, when you saw rankings of best dancers in K-pop, the lists were male-dominated. For female idols, they added that they were the best female dancers, male idols were just the best dancers. Because the male idols were dancing way stronger and it looks way more impressive. But you didn't let the female idols dance as strongly, because that was overdancing? Make it make sense. This bothers female idols as well. Ryujin from ITZY said that she was tired of being complimented only in relation to the girl group image. Nobody would say that a performance was pretty good for a boy group. It sounds condescending. If the industry hadn't created a false stereotype, the hard-working idols could be complimented just in relation to themselves. Why does it matter? In feminist analysis, it's often discussed why these differences are artificially created in different cultures. One explanation is that this display of differences plays a role in upholding patriarchy. They create and signify polar differences between sexes that only exist as part of a social construct within a culture. In this case, it perpetuates the idea that women are weaker and more focused on looking pretty because that's what their dances look like compared to boy groups. As seen in the dance scene, there is no truth to that sex-based distinction. Dance style, it's actually a matter of training, personal preference, and background. Just because some current Western stereotypes like wearing colorful makeup or crop tops are not upheld in the K-pop industry, the differences are still fabricated in other parts of the industry, such as dance. So, now let's look back at the definition. Does this distinction impose limits based on whether someone is a woman or a man? Yes. Does it perpetuate stereotypes? According to the conclusion I made previously, it does. It portrays the idea that guys are powerful, strong, can push through while girls are pretty, more fragile and should hold back. Does it make fans believe that women are weaker and less capable? Sometimes, this is an explanation found in comments on this issue, usually said by people who aren't experienced in dance themselves. My personal opinion and outlook into the future. Shows like Street Woman Fighter have shown everyone that feminine dancers and dance styles aren't weak. Now, what is a possible solution? Many seem to hope that the closer girl groups dance to the open style trends, the better. I disagree. As I have explained, there is a tradition, an actual style behind girl group choreographies, which has its own advantages and many fans love this style. For example, I believe that the focus on alignment and posture leads to a more rare occurrence of serious back injuries in girl groups compared to boy groups. Also, it has unique aspects of girl group choreo that are recognizable as K-pop. It's less based on trends from somewhere else. Because of that, I dislike the idea that the problem has to be solved by everyone just doing the exact same thing men already do, because that implies that what boy groups did was inherently better all along. I also don't think girl group choreos have to be harder than they are now. I just don't think that there should be such a limited technique for either based on gender alone. Companies should offer more versatile training opportunities. In the past, it was often seen as an accomplishment for the female dancer if she was allowed to train with the boys. That is actually really twisted, if you think about it. Instead, I'm hoping that female idols with a dance background in street styles like Fromiz and Nine Haeong don't have to give up their style, that there are girl groups who fully embrace this style as well, but at the same time not all girl groups have to. Dancers like Jaiwoo from Mix, who has a technique and forwards-placed alignment more suited for boy group choreography, struggles with balance and strength application when dancing to her own group's songs. Those styles could be so interwoven that we don't see a clear distinction in the future. Some girl groups might stick to point dances, others might go the full open style route with all of the technique, and the same could happen for the guys. Positive examples that go into the right direction. Last year, there were choreos that I would interpret as an attempt at deconstructing stereotypes, not as a shock factor, but just as cool choreos. Fourth-gen girl groups like NMIXX and Pixie are a step in the right direction, as are choreos like 17's Cheers.